Sufism, or Tasawwuf, is often misunderstood in today's world. Many people see it only as a mystical branch of Islam filled with rituals, chanting, poetry, and spiritual ceremonies. The early Sufi masters often said that Sufism is not a new path, but the heart of Islam itself. It is the ihsan that the Prophet Muhammad described when he said, "To worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you cannot see Him, then know that He sees you." This awareness of being constantly in the presence of Allah is the essence of Tasawwuf. It is not about adding new practices, but about deepening one's relationship with the Creator through sincerity and remembrance. When a believer reaches this state, every act of worship becomes alive, each prayer becomes a meeting with Allah, each word becomes a reflection of love, and each breath becomes a reminder of His mercy. In the hidden core of Sufism, there is a deep focus on the purification of the heart. The heart in Islamic spirituality is not merely a physical organ, but the seat of spiritual perception. When it becomes covered by sin's ego and worldly desires, it loses its ability to reflect divine light. What the purpose of Sufism is to polish the heart until it shines again, like a clean mirror reflecting the beauty of Allah's attributes. This purification process is not easy. It requires discipline, patience, and constant self-awareness. Through dhikr remembrance, muraqabah, watchfulness, and muhasabah, self-examination, the seeker begins to see their own faults and strives to correct them. Sufis often say that the greatest jihad is not the fight against others, but the struggle against one's own nafs, the ego, the lower self that constantly calls to pride, anger, and desire. To defeat the nafs is to free the soul from slavery to worldly attachments and to bring it closer to its true nature. Submission to Allah, this inner battle, is the true essence of Tasawwuf. It is not about withdrawing from the world, but about transforming how one lives in it. A true Sufi is not one who isolates himself, but one who walks among people with love, humility, and mercy, seeing the light of Allah in every face. Many misunderstand Sufism as something mysterious or foreign to Islam. In reality, it is deeply rooted in the Quran and the Sunnah. The Prophet was the greatest of all Sufis, though he never used the term. His entire life was a perfect balance of outward worship and inward devotion. His nights were filled with tears and prayers, his heart constantly remembering Allah. The companions who learned from him carried this light into their lives. Over time, this inner path became known as Tasawwuf, the science of the heart. The hidden core of Sufism is therefore not about rituals or esoteric secrets. It is about sincerity, purity, and love. It calls the believer to remove hypocrisy, to stop worshiping for show, and to worship purely for Allah's sake. It teaches that real knowledge is not memorizing words, but realizing truths within. It teaches that the most dangerous veil between man and his creator is the illusion of self. Once the self dissolves in humility, what remains is only light, the awareness that there is no reality except Allah. So the hidden core of Sufism is not something far or mystical. It is right within the heart of every believer who seeks to know Allah not just through the tongue, but through the soul. It is about transforming every moment into remembrance, every breath into gratitude, and every hardship into a step closer to divine. When the heart awakens in this way, the world no longer blinds it. The person begins to live not for this world, but for the eternal one. That is the real essence of Tasawwuf, the secret path that leads from ritual to realization, from the outer to the inner, and from self to surrender. The secret path of the saints in Sufism, also known as the journey of the Awliya Allah, is one of the most mysterious and profound aspects of Islamic spirituality. It is a hidden path not marked by wealth, fame, or power, but by purity of heart, sincerity of intention, and closeness to the divine. Those who walk this path are often misunderstood by the world because their connection is not with the visible realm, but with the unseen reality that lies beyond human perception. They are people whose hearts have been awakened by the light of Allah, and through that awakening, they see the world not as it appears, but as it truly is, a manifestation of divine wisdom and mercy. From the earliest generations of Islam, Sufi masters have spoken of an inner chain of transmission known as the silsala, a continuous line of spiritual inheritance linking the seeker back to the Prophet Muhammad A. This chain is not based on worldly titles or authority, but on spiritual purification and divine trust. Every true Sufi master was trained by another who had already crossed the ocean of the self and arrived at the shore of divine nearness. This transmission is what keeps the spiritual heart of Islam alive, a light passed from heart to heart, often hidden from the masses but known to those who sincerely seek Allah. The saints of Islam never claimed divinity or superiority. They lived among people, ate with the poor, and prayed in silence, often unnoticed. Yet their presence transformed hearts and guided lost souls back to the Creator. Their power was not material but spiritual, a power born from absolute submission to Allah's will. These saints were the protectors of inner knowledge, known in Sufi tradition as Ilm al-Batin, the hidden wisdom that cannot be written in books or memorized by the tongue, but must be engraved into the heart through experience, suffering, and divine love. Sufis believe that the path of the saints is veiled because not everyone is ready to understand it. The world values external knowledge, but the saints guard the inner knowledge of divine reality. They speak in symbols, poetry, and silence. To the untrained eye, their words may seem simple or even strange, but to those with a purified heart, they are keys that unlock the doors of spiritual awakening. This secrecy is not to exclude anyone, but to protect the sacred from being distorted or misused by ego-driven minds. Just as a doctor does not hand dangerous medicine to an untrained person, the saints do not expose divine secrets to those who would misuse them for power, pride, or fame. Many of these saints lived through extreme trials. They were often rejected, mocked, or even persecuted for their devotion and their insistence that true religion lies not in appearances but in inner transformation. They taught that prayer without sincerity, fasting without humility, and knowledge without love are empty shells. Their lives were examples of spiritual courage, walking the narrow path of truth when others followed comfort and illusion. They taught that the real jihad is not the war against others, but the war against one's own ego, the ganafs, which stands between the human soul and the divine. The path of the saints is also a path of annihilation, known as a Fana. It is the death of the self in the remembrance of Allah. When a person reaches this stage, they no longer act for their own desires or recognition. Their will becomes one with the will of the Creator. They become instruments of mercy, walking upon the earth in humility, but radiating divine light. This state cannot be described, it can only be lived. Those who have tasted it no longer see separation between themselves and creation, for everything is seen as a reflection of Allah's presence. What makes this path dangerous is not its teachings, but the transformation it demands. It requires the seeker to strip away everything false, pride, greed, attachment, and self-worship. It demands complete surrender. Few can endure this inner purification because it feels like a kind of death before death. But those who endure emerge reborn, filled with light, compassion, and wisdom. They are no longer bound by the illusions of the world. They become mirrors of divine truth. The saints do not seek followers or fame. They serve silently, guiding those whom Allah sends their way. Their goal is not to control but to liberate, not to impress but to awaken. They remind humanity of what it has forgotten, that the heart is the true throne of the divine, and that love is the only bridge between the human and the eternal. The secret path of the saints continues to exist, hidden in every age, calling quietly to those whose souls are restless in the darkness of the material world. It is not a path for everyone, but for those chosen by longing, those who hear the whisper of the beloved calling them home. The danger of misunderstanding Sufism lies not in the teachings themselves, but in how people perceive and interpret them. Many approach the subject with preconceived notions, thinking that Tasawwuf is about mysticism detached from Islamic law, or that it introduces strange innovations into religion. In truth, Sufism is the spiritual dimension of Islam, deeply rooted in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. It focuses on the inner purification of the heart, sincerity in worship, and living with constant awareness of Allah. But when people either misunderstand or misuse it, what was meant to bring one closer to Allah can become a tool for confusion and spiritual misguidance. One of the greatest misunderstandings is the separation of Tasawwuf from Sharia. Some people think they can attain closeness to Allah merely through meditation, chants, or emotional experiences while neglecting prayer, fasting, and lawful behavior. This is a serious deviation from the essence of Sufism. The true Sufi masters have always emphasized that spiritual realization is impossible without obedience to Allah's commands. They teach that the outward law, a Sharia, and the inward path, the Haqiq, are inseparable. Like two wings of a bird, both are needed to soar. When one wing is broken, the flight collapses. The moment Tasawwuf becomes detached from the Quran and Sunnah, it loses its light and turns into darkness. Another danger lies in those who mock or reject Sufism altogether, labeling it as innovation or heresy. These critics often fail to see that the heart of Sufism lies in the prophetic example itself. The Prophet I was the most spiritual of all beings. His nights spent in prayer, his tears shed in remembrance, his humility before Allah. What the early Sufis sought was to imitate this inner state of constant awareness and love. To deny Sufism is, in a sense, to deny the inner dimension of Islam that the Prophet himself embodied. However, because certain individuals have misrepresented it through exaggerated claims, the entire path has become suspect in the eyes of many Muslims. The misunderstanding deepens when false teachers arise, presenting themselves as spiritual guides while seeking fame, wealth, or blind obedience from followers. These individuals may speak the language of spirituality, but their hearts are far from sincerity. They exploit people's longing for divine connection and turn it into a means of control. True Sufism teaches humility, discipline, and submission to Allah, not submission to human personalities. A genuine spiritual guide leads others toward independence through Allah, not dependence on himself. But when people mistake charismatic personalities for spiritual truth, they risk falling into dangerous forms of spiritual manipulation. There is also the intellectual misunderstanding where people reduce Tasawwuf to poetry, philosophy, or emotional symbolism without living its reality. Many admire the writings of Rumi, Ibn Arabi, or Al-Ghazali, but approach them as literature instead of guidance. The beauty of their words becomes decoration, while the transformative power of their message is ignored. Sufism is not meant to entertain the mind, but to awaken the soul. It demands struggle against the ego, jihad al-nafs, patience in trials, and sincerity in intention. When people only read about it, but do not practice its ethics, mercy, truth, humility, they risk turning it into a cultural fashion rather than a spiritual path. The real danger of misunderstanding Tasawwuf is that it can either lead one to arrogance or to rejection of spirituality altogether. On one side are those who think they are spiritually superior because of mystical experiences. On the other are those who deny any inner path and reduce religion to legalism. Both extremes lose balance. Islam was revealed to harmonize the outer and inner law and love, discipline, and devotion. The Prophet A said, "Indeed, in the body there is a piece of flesh. If it is sound, the whole body is sound, and if it is corrupt, the whole body is corrupt. Truly, it is the heart." This hadith captures the essence of Tasawwuf, the work of keeping the heart sound through remembrance, gratitude, and sincerity. When one misunderstands this truth, religion becomes dry and spirituality becomes dangerous. The purpose of Sufism is not to escape the world, but to see Allah's presence within it, not to claim secrets, but to live in humility, not to gain power, but to lose the self in divine love. The danger comes when people seek the path of Tasawwuf for status, mystery, or identity rather than for Allah's sake. What begins as a journey of light can then turn into a path of illusion. To protect oneself from misunderstanding, a seeker must return to the foundation, the Quran, the Sunnah, and the guidance of verified scholars who embody both knowledge and spirituality. True Tasawwuf refines the soul, strengthens faith, and deepens compassion. It reminds us that Islam is not only about what we believe or do, but about who we become in the sight of Allah. When understood correctly, Tasawwuf is not dangerous. It is the purification of danger within ourselves. In the world of Tasawwuf, the heart is not merely a physical organ. It is the spiritual center of human existence, the throne of divine awareness. Sufi masters teach that true knowledge does not enter through the ears or the intellect. It descends into the heart. The heart is where divine light, nur, is received, where remembrance, a dhikr, takes root, and where one experiences the true presence of Allah. This hidden knowledge, known as ilm al-batin, the inner science, is what distinguishes the people of Tasawwuf from those who limit their understanding to outer forms and appearances. It is a knowledge that cannot be written in books or memorized through study. It is unveiled only through purification, sincerity, and divine grace. The journey toward this hidden knowledge begins with tazkiyah al-nafs, the purification of the self. The ego, or nafs, veils the heart with layers of desire, pride, and attachment. Just as a mirror cannot reflect light when it is covered in dust, the heart cannot reflect divine truths while it is clouded by worldly distractions. Through acts of worship, remembrance, fasting, and silence, the seeker begins to polish the heart. Slowly, what was once dark and heavy becomes luminous and alive. When the heart awakens, the person begins to see not with the physical eyes, but with the basira, the inner sight. This is the beginning of spiritual perception, where one recognizes the presence of Allah in everything, in every moment, and in every soul. Sufi teachers often say that knowledge from the mind divides, but knowledge from the heart unites. The mind seeks proofs and arguments, but the heart seeks only nearness. This hidden knowledge reveals that true understanding does not come from reason alone, but from love. Love that transcends logic and breaks all boundaries. When the heart remembers Allah constantly, its rhythm aligns with the divine remembrance, and every beat becomes a form of worship. The seeker then moves beyond words and thoughts into direct awareness of the divine. This is why the Sufis say, "He who knows himself knows his Lord." Knowing oneself does not mean knowing one's personality or history. It means uncovering the divine spark hidden within the soul that was breathed into us by Allah himself. The path to unlocking the heart's hidden knowledge is not an easy one. It requires patient silence and surrender. The Sufi way is filled with paradoxes. One must lose to gain, die before dying, and be silent to hear the truth. The more the seeker empties himself of pride and ego, the more divine light fills his being. This process can be painful because it destroys false identities and attachments. Yet, through this destruction, one finds the real self, the self that is connected to Allah, not separated from him. When the heart becomes purified, it turns into a mirror reflecting divine beauty. Everything the seeker sees is no longer seen as separate or random. It becomes a sign of the Creator's wisdom and mercy. In this awakened state, every action becomes sacred. Eating, walking, speaking, all are acts of remembrance when done with awareness of Allah. The Sufi no longer seeks miracles or secret powers. The greatest miracle is a heart that is alive and at peace with its Creator. The Prophet Muhammad said, "Truly, in the body there is a piece of flesh. If it is sound, the whole body is sound. And if it is corrupt, the whole body is corrupt. Indeed, it is the heart." This hadith reveals the essence of Tasawwuf, to heal and awaken the heart so that the entire being becomes aligned with divine purpose. The hidden knowledge of the heart is not meant for fame or power. It is meant to bring humility, compassion, and balance. When the heart knows Allah, it cannot harm others, for it sees every soul as a reflection of divine creation. The one who carries this inner knowledge becomes a servant of humanity, spreading peace and light wherever he goes. His silence speaks wisdom, his gaze gives comfort, and his presence inspires remembrance. Such people may live hidden among us unnoticed, yet their hearts are connected to the unseen world. The true danger of this path lies in forgetting that the heart's illumination is not one's own achievement, but a gift from Allah. The moment the ego claims ownership of this light, it disappears. The secret of the heart remains safe only with the humble. Thus, the ultimate goal of Tasawwuf is not the discovery of mysteries, but the realization of the one who holds all mysteries. When the heart becomes the throne of remembrance, there is no longer I or me. There is only Allah. The seeker dissolves into his will, and what remains is peace, love, and divine unity. This is the hidden knowledge of the heart, the eternal truth that the mind cannot grasp, but the heart, when purified, can fully witness. The path of Tasawwuf, the inner dimension of Islam, is not a journey of comfort and ease. It is a path that strips away illusions, ego, and attachment, demanding from the seeker complete surrender to Allah. When a person truly decides to walk the Sufi path, they are not simply learning new rituals or reading mystical poetry. They are entering a battlefield within themselves, a war between the soul that seeks truth and the ego that resists it. The seeker's tests are not external trials alone. They are spiritual storms that shake the very foundation of oneself, revealing hidden weaknesses, desires, and fears. This is why the path of Tasawwuf is often called dangerous, not because it leads one away from faith, but because it destroys every false image one has built of faith, self, and God. The first test for every seeker begins with the purification of intention. Many begin the journey with the desire for miracles, visions, or spiritual powers. But Tasawwuf teaches that these are illusions of the ego. The true goal is not to become special in the eyes of people, but to become nothing before Allah. When a seeker's heart is not sincere, the path itself becomes confusing and heavy. Teachers of the heart often warn their disciples that the nafs, the lower self, disguises itself even as piety. It whispers pride into the soul, saying, "You are chosen," when in reality, true seekers must learn humility so deep that they disappear into service. The path begins when one stops trying to appear spiritual and starts to become real before Allah. The second test comes from detachment. The Sufi path demands the heart's freedom from worldly dependence, not by abandoning the world, but by not allowing it to own you. A seeker may lose wealth, status, or relationships as Allah purifies what distracts them from Him. These are not punishments, but divine gifts, each stripping away attachments that cloud the heart. The seeker learns through pain that love for Allah requires letting go of what is temporary. Just as a mirror cannot reflect light while covered in dust, the heart cannot receive divine illumination while covered in desires. The pain of loss becomes the polishing that makes the heart shine. Another deep test lies in patience. Sufis say that the journey toward Allah is long and lonely. Sometimes prayers seem unanswered, progress feels invisible, and the heart grows weary. But this is the secret of divine training. In silence and delay, the seeker learns reliance and surrender. Allah does not abandon those who seek Him. He only hides Himself to see who continues searching in the dark. This patience transforms faith from belief into experience. When a seeker remains steadfast in times of spiritual dryness, they are being shaped into sincerity itself. Then comes the test of knowledge. As the seeker learns the hidden realities of the self and the unseen, there is a danger of pride in knowing. Some may believe they have reached a high station and begin to look down on others. The Sufi masters warn that this is the most subtle trap of the path. True knowledge is not knowing more. It is realizing how little you truly know. The closer one gets to Allah, the smaller one feels before His majesty. Real wisdom humbles, it does not inflate. When the seeker's heart bows in humility before the infinite, that is when real enlightenment begins. One of the greatest tests is the breaking of the ego. Allah sends trials that seem unbearable: rejection, humiliation, betrayal, or failure, all designed to crush the illusion of control. The seeker who once thought they were strong learns that true strength lies only in surrender. Every tear shed, every humiliation faced, and every wound carried becomes a doorway to divine nearness. These are not punishments, but signs of divine love. Allah breaks the heart not to destroy it, but to open it wider for his presence. At the end of all these tests, the seeker realizes the greatest secret of the path. What they were seeking was never outside themselves. The journey was inward all along. A return to the pure heart that Allah placed within them before time began. The ego dies, but the soul awakens. What remains is silence, peace, and love that flows from Allah alone. This is why the Sufis say, when I died to myself, I became truly alive. The tests of the seeker are not meant to destroy, but to transform. They turn the human heart into a mirror of divine light, reflecting the truth that there is no reality except Allah. The one who survives the tests does not emerge as a saint or a mystic, but as a servant, humble, purified, and completely surrendered to the will of the most merciful. The final secret of Sufism, the hidden essence of Tasawwuf, is the complete unity with the divine will, a realization so deep that it transforms not only how one sees the world, but how one exists within it. At the core of all Sufi teachings lies the declaration, La ilaha illallah, there is no deity, no power, no existence except Allah. This truth is not just a statement of faith, but the very foundation of spiritual awakening. To truly live this reality is to dissolve the illusion of separation between the self and the creator, between the servant and the Lord, between will and destiny. The journey to this understanding begins when a seeker abandons the idea of ownership, control, and independent existence. Everything that the seeker perceives, joy, pain, loss, or victory, becomes recognized as a manifestation of divine wisdom. The heart that once resisted life's events now surrenders, realizing that nothing unfolds outside of Allah's command. This surrender is not weakness, it is liberation. The Sufis call it rida, contentment with divine decree. When the heart reaches this station, it no longer complains about what was or what could be. It simply says, Allah knows, and his knowledge is enough. Reaching unity with the divine will requires the death of the ego, what Sufis call Fana, annihilation. It is not physical death, but the death of illusions. The ego constantly whispers, I want, I decide. But in Tasawwuf, this false I is the greatest veil between the soul and Allah. Through sincere remembrance, dhikr, the seeker begins to erase the self from the equation of existence. The repetition of Allah's name acts like waves washing away the footprints of the ego on the sand of the heart. Slowly, the seeker awakens to the realization that every thought, every breath, every heartbeat is sustained by the divine. The awareness deepens until there remains no separate I who loves Allah. There is only Allah loving through his servant. The duality of lover and beloved disappears. This is the secret of the wadat al-wujud, the unity of being, a truth only the heart can taste but never fully describe. In this state, obedience no longer feels forced. The seeker does not worship out of fear, hell, or desire for paradise. Worship becomes an expression of love, not a transaction. Every prayer, every act of kindness, every sigh becomes a silent conversation with the beloved. The Quran says, and you do not will except that Allah wills. Al-Shura al, Incense 76 this verse encapsulates the essence of Tasawwuf, that even the desire to remember Allah is itself placed in the heart by him. When the seeker realizes this, arrogance dissolves completely. One stops claiming ownership of good deeds and sees them as divine gifts flowing through the vessel of the self. This unity with the divine will does not mean the seeker becomes passive or careless about life. On the contrary, it brings deeper presence, gratitude, and purpose. The Sufis act with complete effort, ikhlas, but without attachment to results. Their motto becomes work as if everything depends on you, and trust as if everything depends on Allah. This balance transforms ordinary life into worship. Even pain becomes a teacher. Every hardship becomes a mirror reflecting the wisdom of the beloved. The heart learns to see divine mercy hidden within every trial. At the highest stage, called Baqa, eternal subsistence in Allah, the seeker who once felt separated now realizes that everything is a manifestation of his names and attributes. the wind that blows, the stars that shine, the hearts that beat, all are signs of his presence. The seeker walks among people, eats, sleeps, and speaks like others, yet inside there is no other. The self has become transparent, a mirror reflecting only the divine light. Such people are the true, Awliya Allah, the friends of God who live in the world but belong entirely to the unseen. Unity with the divine will is the final secret of Tasawwuf because it cannot be learned. It can only be lived. It is not knowledge of the tongue, but knowledge of the heart. It is the realization that nothing in existence moves except by his command, that every soul's journey is already written with infinite wisdom. The seeker who reaches this point no longer seeks power, visions, or miracles. They seek only to be in harmony with the will of the One. When they say, La ilaha illallah, it is no longer a phrase. It is the rhythm of their very being. And in that moment, they discover the most dangerous and the most beautiful secret of all, that there never was anything but Allah.